Well, what is up, guys? It is As Josh Season, and it has been a little while since we've had a video, and we are here today. It is a very exciting day. We're here at Irv Seaver Motorcycles, and today is the day we are picking up a new bike. We are picking up a brand new motorcycle, and you guys are going to witness it with me. So here we go. Let's do this. All right, here we are in Irv Seaver Motorcycles here in Orange County, California. We are here at beautiful showroom, and today we are picking up a brand new 2021 BMW R18 First Edition. BMW is getting into the cruiser world, and I'm excited to bring it to you guys. Right here we have Devin. He is the sales manager here at Irv Seaver BMW Motorcycles. Devin, thank you so much, man. You ready to do this? All right, man, let's sign some paperwork. Let's do the deed.
That's it, man. Last one makes it yours.
There we go, man. Thank you so much. Well, there you guys have it. We have the brand new 2021 BMW R18 First Edition. We officially picked it up. Want to give a huge shout out to Irv Seaver Motorcycles for making this happen. The whole entire sales process was super easy. Very friendly, hospitable group. If you guys are in the Orange County area, be sure to give them a look. Go take a look at all the bikes. They have cruisers, they have full touring bikes, they have adventure bikes, they have everything you guys could want. Go take a look at them. Thank you guys to Irv Seaver, and I am excited to give you guys a full tour of this motorcycle. We're gonna hop on it right now, and I'm gonna give you guys my first impressions. Obviously, this bike has been a little bit polarizing on the internet. People have either loved it or they have hated it, and I'm gonna give you guys kind of my hot take. Obviously, I like it enough to buy it, and I'm gonna tell you guys kind of the reasons why. So come along with me as we go on our first official ride on the BMW R18 First Edition. Well, all right, guys, here we have it. The brand new BMW R18 First Edition. And we are hopping on this bike. It is officially ours. We have taken ownership of it, and we're going to ride out of here on it. Ooh. It feels nice. You definitely feel the horizontally opposed engine on here. You can feel, I mean, literally when you rev it, this bike goes from right to left. That's crazy. There's a good amount of rumble that you guys can see here. Definitely feels alive. This is unique for BMW. All right. Thank you, Irv Seaver Motorcycles. We're out of here. Well, guys, here is the motorcycle. So the first thing that I want to talk about, and this is one of the most obvious things that I think we need to cover here, is just the overall design, aesthetic, and the feel of what we have here. So what we have is a 750-pound, really low riding, 1800cc torquey cruiser motorcycle. So, you know, when I think about this bike, I think about like Harley-Davidson's Heritage Softail. I think about the Indian Scout Bobber. This is going to be of that same vein, and this is BMW really getting into the cruiser world. And yeah, this bike is crazy. I mean, the first thing that you see when you walk up to this motorcycle is really the design and the style of it all. So you're going to see that this bike sits really low. There's going to be a lot of clean lines. Obviously on the First Edition, you're going to have a lot of the pinstriping that you can see right here. You're going to have the single headlight up front. You're going to see the speedometer. Honestly, I really like just the cockpit feel of this. You have a lot of chrome kind of all over the bike. Your master brake cylinder right here, your clutch reservoir, this is all chrome. It's really nice. You're going to have kind of these chrome tips right here. And then obviously one of the things that you notice right away is the big 1800cc BMW Boxer engine that's just sticking out on both sides right here. Obviously a big statement piece. You're going to get the fishtail exhausts that are going to come on this bike, and this bike is definitely a head turner. This is certainly one of the more unique bikes that I've seen on the road recently. You know, when I think about this bike, there's been a couple people that have said, you know, oh, I don't really like this bike, or it feels like BMW is trying to, you know, give a throwback to something that, you know, they don't really have here, and it's kind of a pitch to the classic. Well, if you look back to BMW and their history of riding motorcycles, gotta love California splitting lanes. If you think back to the history of BMW motorcycles, BMW has kind of been in the world of cruiser motorcycles for a long time now, and I think of the bikes like the R32 or the R5 or some of these iconic classic motorcycles that BMW was designing way back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. This bike really is paying homage to some of the heritage that BMW has all the years. Obviously, you know, one of the first things that you notice is kind of a parallel between some of these older bikes and the newer bike is going to be the exposed drive shaft. Very, very unique. It's a cool design piece. On all of the BMW R models, you're going to get the horizontally opposed engine, and you're going to get a feel on this. I mean, you guys can probably see right here, you can see literally this bike shakes at a stoplight. You know, this isn't a bike that BMW wanted to design to be very refined and, you know, not really feel like you're on a motorcycle. I mean, they have other bikes like that. Honestly, I mean, the GS, the RTs, some of those higher end bikes, you know, have a really nice feel. BMW intentionally designed this thing to have a little bit of a rumble and a shake to it, so when you're on it, you kind of feel like you're on one of these old school cruiser bikes. Obviously, some people are going to like that, some people aren't. You know, I happen to enjoy it. Obviously, we bought this motorcycle. This one comes in a beautiful liquid black paint job. This bike has a monoshock suspension in the rear, so, you know, it's not going to be crazy comfortable on long rides, but that's not why I got this motorcycle. I can say that the stock seat isn't terribly uncomfortable. I've certainly been on less comfortable seats, so there you go. We'll see after, you know, put a couple hundred miles how my back is feeling, but immediately not terribly uncomfortable at all. It is a very sunny day here in Southern California. I believe it's about 75 degrees outside, so really a perfect day to be out here riding motorcycles. Yeah, this bike's a trip, guys. It has an 1800cc engine. It has over 100 foot-pounds of torque, and I mean, really, this thing just gets up and goes in every way that you want it to. I mean, I'm honestly surprised at the amount of torque that this thing really has. Oh, there we go. Yeah, this bike is plenty quick here, especially as you open it up. This bike has 3 different riding modes. It has a kind of cheesy names. It has rock, it has roll, and then it has a rain riding mode. I had the bike in just the regular roll riding mode for a while when I was test riding it a couple weeks ago. It's all right, honestly, but when I put the bike into the rock mode, kind of its more aggressive riding mode, the bike really came to life. It's a lot more torquey, a lot more responsive, and as soon as I put it in that, I was like, okay, that's really the only riding mode that I'm ever going to have this bike in. You know, I think, honestly, if there's rain on the forecast, I'm going to grab a different motorcycle. I'm going to grab like the GS 1250 or something like that. So yeah, very big engine, a lot of torque, weighs about 750 pounds, so you know, not as heavy and sluggish as like a full bagger or something like that. Definitely more in the cruiser world. But I will say that, you know, the brakes don't feel as responsive as, say, maybe a Harley-Davidson Fat Boy or even the Indian Scout. So that's definitely interesting. And interestingly enough, I mean, BMW has some really, really good technology in this bike. So some of the technology that you have in here is you have linked braking, so when you hit the front brake, it's automatically going to cue in your back brakes also. Some of the electronics that it has in it, standard, you have heated grips that come standard on this motorcycle, so that's cool on days that it's going to be a little chilly. Let's see here if we can't get around this turn. Honestly, pretty good lean angle, and I know that's been one of the critiques that people have had about the R18 is they say it's really easy to scrape the foot pegs. I've seen a lot of video reviews of people that have taken out the R18 Classic, and that bike has floorboards instead of the foot pegs that I have. I'm not sure if those floorboards sit any lower. Obviously they're going to come out more, maybe make it easier to scrape, but honestly guys, I mean, you saw the turn I just took. I'm not really scraping foot pegs that easy on this bike, and again, the purpose of this bike is going to be to cruise. If you want a motorcycle that you're out carving canyons and really racing through corners, go pick a different bike. You know, go get your R6 or your Gixxers or something that's a little more capable for that. This bike is really just about cruising on the open road, taking your time, enjoying things, and there you go. And we're going to take this bike through a little bit. Oh, let's see how good the braking capability is. That's funny, I just knocked on the braking capability. Honestly, it's not bad, guys. I mean, it's not like you can't stop the motorcycle on a dime. I mean, I wasn't even braking 100%, and this bike stopped as quick as it needed to. So even at 750 pounds, obviously you have dual disc in the front of this motorcycle. It's going to stop as quick as you need it to. Sure, are there bikes that have better brake systems on it? Absolutely. Is it a deal breaker for me? Absolutely not. And so some of the other technology that this bike has cruise control built in, has the different ride modes that I mentioned, your tack, and you know, all of the displays and everything that you have are going to be pretty basic. It is a cruiser bike, so you're not going to get like the big touchscreen display that you have on some of the larger models. But one crazy thing that you do get on this motorcycle, and it's crazy that bikes are starting to come with this bike has a reverse gear. You heard that right, it has a reverse gear. So on the side of the bike here, you know, there's a little lever right here. If you put it down, let's see if I can just try it real quick. Put that down, bike's in neutral. You're going to use the same thing that you would use starter for. This bike literally goes in reverse. That's so crazy. That's an interesting piece of technology that BMW has on this. One really cool thing that you get on this bike standard is you get a full adaptive LED headlight on the motorcycle. So as you lean to the left, it's going to throw more light to the left hand side. As you lean to the right, it'll throw more light to the right. It basically make it easier for you to go around corners, especially when you're in a nighttime environment. Super cool that BMW chose to include an LED light standard on their motorcycle. I think that's a huge win, and I'm surprised that there are other motorcycle manufacturers that aren't including LED lights, and they're still going with kind of standard halogen lights. We're about to take the bike through some canyons right now, and probably as good of a time as any to talk about some of the ergonomics of the bike. So this bike again is going to be a cruiser. It sits pretty low. At a stoplight, you know, I'm able to firmly plant my feet. I am 5'10". I have a 30-inch inseam, so I'm not on the tall side. I would say I'm not on the short side, just somewhere kind of right in the middle. This bike, I don't feel like it's too short for me. Even with the mid controls, you know, I don't feel like my legs are really cramped here or anything. I'll say that on longer rides, it would be nice to utilize highway pegs or something like that, where I can kind of stretch my legs out, and obviously that's not really an option here with the horizontally opposed boxer engine. But again, if you think back to the purpose of what this motorcycle was designed for, you're probably not taking this bike out if you're going to do, you know, 300, 400, 500 mile rides on it. That's, you know, not really the intended purpose of this bike. So riding position is pretty good. You know, I think even the bar height is okay for me. The stance is a little bit wide, but again, it's kind of more of a cruiser, definitely not an aggressive stance at all. You're really just relaxed on this motorcycle. The seat, you know, time will tell how comfortable it is. I'll say at an initial glance, it's not uncomfortable, but it's definitely a far cry from like a full touring bagger seat, or, you know, even some of the seats on the adventure bikes. I mean, it's a cruiser. You definitely feel a little bit of rumble in your backside, you know, especially when you're accelerating in the rock mode. You can feel this bike, you can feel kind of its personality on it. So obviously this bike does not come with any sort of windshield. If you want a windshield, you're going to pay more money for that. You're going to have to go to the R18 Classic or the R18B, which stands for bagger, or even their transcontinental, which gets you either a windshield, full fairing, all of those things. This bike, the R18 and the R18 First Edition, do not come with anything, so you're going to get all of that wind, you know, right on your chest. So if you're not used to that, you just need to consider that when you're buying this motorcycle. So you do have pegs, you have foot pegs, you don't have floorboards. For some people, you know, that's going to bother them. I think for the cruiser crowd, they're pretty much used to that. There are rear foot pegs as well if you want to have a passenger on this bike. Honestly, I mean, this bike to me is more of a solo bike. I can't imagine taking a passenger on this bike for a long period of time. I do appreciate that BMW included some minor risers here on the handlebars with a little bit of pullback. I feel like it's a good ergonomic stance. You know, I'm not leaned really that far forward. I'm trying to reach for the handlebars. I still have a good amount of elbow bend here, and I feel like I'm in a responsive, you know, semi-aggressive stance without being hunched over and feeling like I'm on a naked bike or a street bike or something like that. So definitely a more kind of relaxed version. Overall ergonomics of this bike, I would say very, very comfortable. For short distances, there are more comfortable bikes, but they're in a different riding class. There are less comfortable bikes, but again, they're going to be designed for something completely different. In the world of just comparing cruisers, honestly, this is as comfortable to me as a Fat Boy. This is as comfortable as the Indian Scout. This is going to be right kind of on par with those. Again, you have a monoshock rear shock on the back. Just talk a little bit of specifics about the fuel tank. Has a 4.3 gallon tank, so not the biggest tank in the world, but on par with other cruisers. You do not have any sort of fuel gauge on there, so it's kind of back to the old school of like, hey, filling it up, keeping track of the current trip you have. You do get a fuel warning when you're at low fuel, and at that point a little electronic reader pops up that shows you about how many miles you have left until empty. So that's kind of a cool feature that you have that, you know, you don't have on some of like the Sportsters and the smaller bikes. But you do not have a fuel gauge of any kind on there, so just be mindful of that when you're considering purchasing this motorcycle. See some acceleration here. Yeah, this bike moves, guys. I mean, when I talked about that torque earlier, that's some of it, and you're up to decent highway speeds here in almost no time. This bike is really, really impressive. It's putting out similar power bands to that of the 114 engine and the Harley-Davidson, in a bike that's only, you know, just north of 700 pounds. This is definitely, it's funny, even though it's a cruiser, this is a fun bike to take through the canyons. I'm not having fun right now on it. And this is a BMW cruiser, guys. This is their getting into a world that's kind of been dominated by Harley-Davidson, a little bit by Indian. Not really that many other people have stepped into this world. And this bike, you can feel the rumble in it. It has personality. It has some character. It has some grit to it. You know, it doesn't feel super refined while still having enough technology and luxury to kind of carry the BMW name. Shifting gears through this is relatively seamless. You know, you don't have a lot of clunkiness in the transmission that you have in some of the Harley-Davidson models, but you still have that rumble from the engine. So, all right, guys. Well, a little bit of an outfit change. It was getting a little warm, so I had to ditch the jacket, but I think it's just time for a little bit of an overview, kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, just consider everything that we've talked about so far in the video. Obviously, this is a big, beefy engine with a whole bunch of torque and a BMW cruiser bike. Honestly, the ergonomics are pretty good. You get some fancy technology out of the motorcycle. It is on the higher price point when considering, you know, kind of its competitors like the Indian Scout, Harley-Davidson Softail lineup. This is going to come in at the pricier aspect, at least if you go with the first edition model like we have here. But there is something kind of to this bike that is, it's hard to hate, honestly. It has a rumble to it. I mean, you can see here, even at the stop sign, you know, it is rumbling. It feels like it has a personality. It catches looks when you're riding down the road. It is pointing back to something. It's pointing back to its heritage. It's, you know, from the 1920s and 30s. You have the B32, you have the B5, you have the R32, you have the R5, you have all of this historic lineup of bikes that this bike is really paying homage to, and I think it it does so pretty well, man. This is a cool bike. There's no getting around it. This bike is going to turn heads when you're going for a cruise on the side streets, when you're taking this thing out on the weekend. It's a fun bike, sure. It's not perfect. No bike is perfect. You know, there's going to be some pros, there's going to be some cons. Some of the cons that I would say against this bike right now, while the engine looks really cool right here, it does cramp up the amount of foot space you have. So, you know, if I'm using the shift lever to downshift, I can feel that my toe is kind of pressing up against the backside of this big boxer engine right here. I don't love that, but it'll probably just be something I have to get used to, or shift, you know, where my foot actually sits on the pegs themselves. And then there's just some little things here and there. Obviously, it's a 750-pound bike. You know, I wish the brakes were a little bit more touchy and responsive. They're not sluggish by any means, but that's kind of what you get. Honestly, though, for me, obviously, we just took ownership of the bike. The pros obviously outweighed the cons for me. This is a really cool motorcycle that's going to get a ton of attention while you're going down the road. So the question that I'm sure you are wondering right now is, who is this bike intended for? First, you know, I think this is going to be a bike that's going to be a great bike for somebody who's relatively new to riding. This probably isn't someone's first bike, as it's a little heavy. It does have a good amount of torque to it. But honestly, somebody that maybe started out on a Harley-Davidson Sportster or a little or naked bike that's kind of in the mood to go on a little bit longer distances, wants something with a little more power, wants that 6th gear and a transmission, this is going to be a good step up for those types of people. Maybe that person doesn't necessarily want a full touring bagger style bike. You know, their rides really lend themselves to more kind of weekend warrior type people, or just somebody who is, you know, maybe on the lighter side, doesn't weigh as much and doesn't feel as comfortable with the larger bike. Somebody who maybe isn't as tall. Honestly, with the total seat height of this bike does sit very, very low, where I could see this being very, very popular for people that even maybe do want a full bagger bike, but struggle with just, you know, walking on their tippy toes at stoplights and all that. This bike certainly is low enough for somebody. I mean, honestly, you could be 5'4" and probably have a good amount of your feet planted when you come to a stop on this motorcycle. Then there's somebody who I think would love this bike, and that is somebody who honestly really likes heritage. We've talked about that already. You know that BMW is pulling from their long history of motorcycle lineups, and the design of this bike, and the teardrop gas tank, and the pinstripes, the horizontally opposed engine that it has here, and the boxer engine, the fishtail pipes that it has, and even the open exposed drive shaft here, all point to something classic, point to something lost in time a little bit. And for, you know, the right type of person, they're going to want that heritage. They're going to like the fact that this is unique, which brings me to the third person that I think would be interested in this bike, and that is the person that wants something that is unique. So the type of person that basically wants to go out on the weekend, doesn't want the same bike as every single other person lined up at the local biker bar. You know, they want something that's going to stand out, that's going to get heads turned. This bike is certainly going to do that. And for the right type of person, I think they're going to be really interested in this motorcycle. And then last but not least, you have someone like me. Someone who rides a lot of different kinds of motorcycles, isn't tied to one brand, one type of bike, has different bikes for different occasions, right? This bike, for me, and the reason that I got it, is a perfect bike for doing exactly what this bike is designed to do, cruising. This is a bike that I'm going to use, you know, maybe on the weekends when we're going up and down the coast, you know, maybe 40 to 100 miles. It's a quick day trip. It's a half-day thing. We're not going far enough for me to need saddlebags or carry a lot of things. This is basically a around-town kind of ripper cruiser bike. If I'm going to do a longer ride, if I'm going to do overnight stuff, if I'm going to do, you know, 300-400 plus miles in a day, I'm not going to take this bike. I'm going to take, you know, a BMW GS 1250 or a Harley-Davidson Road Glide Special, or even the BMW R18 Transcontinental, or just a larger touring bike that's more set up for those types of things. I'm probably not going to take the BMW R18 First Edition on long rides. Not to say that you couldn't. You certainly can do long overnight rides on this. You'd obviously just have to take into consideration getting some additional luggage with this bike, whether it's the BMW frame bag or any of the saddlebags, something like that, to just allow you to carry a little bit more. So you certainly could do it, but again, on a monoshock, rear suspension, your tailbone is probably not going to be too stoked on it, you know, after you're done with doing a multi-day ride on this motorcycle in particular. But for those people that are fortunate enough to have other motorcycles in their arsenal, in their garage, in their fleet, and they just want a bike that's going to be kind of an around town cruiser bike that they're going to take out for 2-3 hours on a Saturday afternoon, and then, you know, put it back in their garage and shine it all up, cover it in wax, and get ready for the next weekend warrior trip, this bike is going to be perfect. And that's honestly not a knock on those people. There's certain people that are just busy and have different lifestyles, and that's the kind of riding that they're into. This is the bike for you. So yeah, whether you're a relatively new rider that's looking to get a bike that's a little bit heavier, whether you want something just totally unique, whether you're somebody that likes paying homage to kind of the heritage of BMW motorcycles, or somebody that's looking to pick up a second or a third or a fourth bike kind of for something different and just want something to cruise around town, I think the BMW R18 First Edition is a contender in the cruiser world. That is my hot take. I think Harley-Davidson and Indian would be foolish not to take BMW seriously as they're entering into this world. They've done a terrific job. No, it's not a perfect motorcycle, but it is a pretty darn good one. So that is my take on the BMW R18 First Edition motorcycle. Hey guys, I want to thank you so much for joining the channel, for taking the time to watch this video. If you like this video content, go ahead and give the channel a subscribe, like this video. Until we meet again next time, peace.